What's up, you guys? I'm Dan, this is Frugal Not Cheap, and today we'll talk about a law that has gone into effect that should help Americans with their finances. Kind of felt like I sounded like a news announcer there for a second there. Anyway, but yeah, so there was a law that went into effect on December the 29th of last year, signed by the president. This is called the Secure Act 2.0. You know, they're always coming up with those names for these bills. The original one was from 2019, so Secure Act 1.0, I guess. And it was the Setting Up Every Community for Retirement Enhancement Act. And this is the sort of the 2.0, or the, addition of the, and the enhancement of that. So it's got a few different parts that kind of affect you on different stages of sort of the life cycle. So I think we'll start talking about the impacts on people that are still of working age. Then we can go towards the more retirement side of things after that. And the first thing, and a very impactful thing, is that now employees of larger companies will be automatically enrolled into the company's 401k program at a minimum of 3% of their salary contribution to a maximum of 10%. And in order to help them get set up for retirement, then this would increase by 1 percentage point per year up to at least 10%. So you could go from that 3%, and then over the next 7 years you'd get up to 10%. And up to a maximum of 15%. So of course you can opt out if this is, at the time not something you're able to do. And businesses that have just started, so there's a certain amount of time where they're exempt, or businesses that have less than 10 employees, these are also exempt as well. But I think making saving towards your retirement being the default thing rather than something that you have to actively choose to do should help people a lot. Unfortunately, in an ideal world, everyone would be super financially savvy. They would have incredible discipline and foresight and planning, and they would set themselves up for the future. Unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in, and one of the reasons why we have Social Security, for instance. So, whether or not, whatever we think about the program and its, viability and all that stuff, the basic idea of it, which is basically just allowing Americans to retire with some dignity, it's pretty great. And so, it's not something that you opt into or out of, it just happens, and you get this benefit in your old age. So even if you're a terrible, terrible saver, that's something that's going to be there for you as long as you paid those Social Security taxes. So with the 401ks, because of course that Social Security alone isn't quite enough really for most people, it depends kind of on the lifestyle that you want to have and what your income was as you were paying into the program. But in any case, unfortunately, we live very far from it where, average 401k savings are really not all that good. So I've pulled up some data here from Vanguard through CNBC Make It. And we can see while the average person that's 65 and older has saved some $280,000 for retirement, which is pretty good. So assuming the 4% rule, each 100,000 gives you about $4,000 a year to spend. So we're looking at about $11,200 of retirement income from that 401k plus Social Security. That doesn't seem so terrible. However, that's the average, and it's skewed by the high savers. The median, which is more representative of most people, is a savings of only $87,000. So there we're talking about only $3,500 in annual income to supplement Social Security, and that's not going to do a whole lot. So hopefully most of these people are going to be homeowners, and so that will reduce their overhead substantially and make those dollars that they have stretch a lot. But still, you can see it's not the prettiest picture in the world. So how much of an impact should the automatic enrollment have? Well, according to some data, amongst employers where the enrollment was already automatic back in 2022, then the enrollment rate was about 93%. So only 7% of employees opted not to contribute. However, when we look at places where the enrollment was not automatic, then no surprise, depending on the income bracket. So the higher the income bracket, then the higher the enrollment percentage. And that makes sense given the amount of disposable income they might have, right? Once you meet your basic needs and then you get more and more income above and beyond that, then you're more and more likely to be able to contribute to a retirement plan. For incomes of between $15,000 and $30,000, enrollment rates were only 30% for men and 43% 63% for women. And you'll see this pattern throughout the data. So generally, where the plan enrollment is voluntary, interestingly, women do enroll in a higher percentage than do men. When we look at the $30,000 to $50,000 income level, which is probably, quite representative of a lot of the population, then we're looking at a 51% enrollment rate for men and a 63% enrollment rate for women. So yeah, we're, above half here, but this is still not really a great enrollment rate, right? And so hopefully this will be bolstered a lot by having it become automatic, getting somewhere closer to that 93% that we see in the data. And then on top of that, we shouldn't forget that in a lot of cases, people are leaving money on the table. So a lot of employers offer some kind of 401k matching, which gives you a 100% return on any income that you put into the plan, up to that match. And so it's pretty crazy to be leaving that on the table, as long as it's not strictly necessary, just things are just way too tight to do that. So that's the first change. I think it could be a very impactful one, and definitely we have precedent to think that it could really help out a lot. One, based on those data for enrollment when it's automatic, only 7% choosing to opt out. Then also just looking at how Social Security seems to work out. Also, like I mentioned, mortgages, home ownership. This tends to be a form of forced savings. People do tend to pay off their mortgages, and then that way they tie up a lot of their savings in the equity in that home. So it's kind of a forced savings and really helps a lot of people that might otherwise not be good savers. And then, even an everyday example that's coming up here in just a couple of months is the tax refund. The tax refund is another form of forced savings that a lot of people take advantage of, because there's the ideal where we all behave perfectly, and then there's the reality where, not all of us are able to have that discipline and foresight, and then, things happen too as well. The next one, which kind of segues really well based on this whole things happening deal, is of course that there can be emergencies. And so now there's going to be the ability for employers to set up $2,500 of Roth. So after tax money that can be used as an emergency savings. So this isn't going to start right away. This begins next year in 2024. But in the bill, you can see that lawmakers were thinking about all those surveys that showed that a lot of Americans wouldn't be able to meet an emergency expense of just $400 without going into debt. And so by having this Roth $2,500 a year in savings plan, this could really help Americans, be incentivized to save in order to have a little bit of a cushion for those emergencies. These wouldn't work exactly like a savings account because they do want to incentivize you to kind of keep the money in there, and so only the first 4 withdrawals would be tax and penalty free within the year. Next, employers now have the ability to do some student loan debt payment matching. So obviously they're not kind of putting that money right towards the debt. Instead, they would matching the dollars that you've put in to pay off your student loans by putting the equal amounts of dollars into your retirement plan. So it's just another way that employers can provide some compensation and then also incentivize employees to pay off their student loan debt. So this could be a pretty great return on paying down debt, because you'd be getting the quote-unquote matching. So you're getting basically a 100% return there on the dollars you deploy, plus you're saving the interest on your student loans. So if those are say 6 or 7 or 8%, then you're getting 107, 108% return on those dollars, which is pretty fantastic. And I think generally just more options for employers for tax-free comp for employees seems like a good thing. Now let's shift our focus towards a little bit later in our careers. Another item is that catch-up contributions. So these are retirement contributions for those aged 50 and up. Beginning in 2024 will be indexed to the IRS, Internal Revenue Services, cost of living adjustment indexes. So those will be going up along with inflation, rather than holding steady until someone decides to make a change to them. So that will be nice for everybody. Just kind of the way that the Roth contribution and 401k contribution limits go up with inflation already. We saw that in an earlier video that I put out this year. Beginning in 2025, they're going to do even more for those that are aged 60 to 63, where the catch-up limits will be raised by the greater of 10K or 150% of the standard catch-up limit. So it's going to help those that are really kind of right with the retirement right around the corner. Starting in next year in 2024 though, if you're a high income earner of over $145,000 a year, then any catch-up contributions that you make will have to be Roth contributions. So they'll be after tax. So that seems like a smart move to get a little bit, tax revenue in there from those that are the most able to afford it. So it is a progressive measure and seems to be an intelligent one by the IRS. And finally, if we look at retired folks here, some nice changes are to required minimum distributions. So that age used to be 70 and a half. It's been moving up and it's now up to the age of 73. And then also a nice thing is that the penalties for not taking those RMDs have been cut sharply, because I don't know, maybe you just the timing's not good, or you get kind of slipped for a moment. The penalties could be quite severe. Well, those have been cut from 50% to a 25% penalty, but if you correct it promptly, then that penalty is cut down even less to just 10%. On top of that, there have also been some more kind of obscure changes to QCDs and QLACs, which are kind of annuities. I don't know that those are really the most common use case, and not something we want to dive into too much. So overall, I think this Secure Act 2.0 seems like something that's going to help the everyday American in a lot of ways, just helping them to be able to afford retirement and navigate those savings a lot better. Also catch up if we're a little bit later to the game. Of course, this does mean that we'll have, all else equal, reduced tax revenues, but in order to promote a societal good, which is, of course, retirement for our citizens. So those are my thoughts. Is there anything about the Secure Act 2.0 that I missed? If there is, please let us know in the comments below. Also, let us know which are the factors that you find most interesting. If you did find today's video helpful, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.